NPR, according to New York Post, is in turmoil after the editor, Yuri Berliner, came out and said, hey, listen, I think NPR is completely lost its way and gone way too far to the left and doesn't care at all about intellectual diversity. And we covered that story. Now, what do you think the president of NPR's reaction was to this?
She said, thank you, Yuri. Thank you. You've pointed out a terrible problem with NPR that we need to fix immediately. Round everyone up. Let's get everyone together. Let's work on this. Let's fix it today.
Yes. Oh my God. How did you know? How did you know? Yes, Catherine Marr, the CEO of NPR, who just became the CEO this year, actually. She's like, listen, Yuri, I love all of this critique you have about how we need to have intellectual diversity here at NPR, how we become way too far, to the progressive left movement in this country. We need to start representing conservatives correctly in this country and being fair and balanced.
Well, fair and balanced, I think, is like I
That's
can't
true.
imagine her saying that.
I'm just kidding. Of course, she didn't say that, Adam. She just said, "I'm gonna stick my fingers in my ears." Na. How dare you, you racist bigot? Okay,
right.
NPR is fighting for anti-racism and truth, and you're a big meanie head if you say otherwise.
Wow. So she went the ostrich route. She just buried her head in the sand.
She went the full, not even the full, she went on the full defensive mode ostrich route. Okay. She first had erected an entire wall around her and NPR, shielding them from any criticism, and then put her head in the sand.
Wow. Okay. So let's look at the article. What's this article say?
Right. So, okay. So before we read into this is her, she actually wrote a longish essay in response to Yuri's critique, which we talked about. If you haven't seen it, we went through and talked about all the juicy bits from it. She wrote a response to it, but before I get into reading some parts of her response, people, including myself, have been going through her Twitter history.
Oh no. Did you do the October 7th test?
Okay, so I actually didn't think to do that October 7th test, which is interesting. I'll look that up. I didn't think to do that. Okay, I wasn't looking for that. I'm assuming she didn't say anything crazy about that. But she did say some things that would sort of lead us to predict what direction she's going to go in regarding her response to all this. So this was a tweet she put out during the Black Lives Matter protests. Okay.
All right.
She said, quote, I mean, sure, looting is counterproductive, but it's hard to be mad about protests not prioritizing the private property of a system of oppression founded on treating people's ancestors as private property.
Oh, this is not good. So this is the new CEO, Catherine Marr.
This is the new CEO. All right. Right.
All right.
The new CEO saying, people shouldn't be mad about Black people not prioritizing private property, rights because, their ancestors were slaves before they were born.
Did you know everyone's ancestors were slaves? It's just a question of how far back you go.
Yes, I did.
Does that mean that we can't honor people's private property because, someone in my history was a slave?
Yes.
Sorry, Catherine. That's a horrible argument.
Right. She also said in the same time period that America is addicted to white supremacy.
Addicted,
yes. America's addicted to white supremacy.
Okay.
She also said lots of jokes about leaving the United States, and I get it, but as someone with cis white mobility privilege, I'm thinking I'm staying, investing, and ridding ourselves of the specter of tyranny.
Cis white mobility privilege. I mean, that sounds like something from an AARP ad.
Doesn't it? Yeah. She also criticized Hillary Clinton when she was running for office for using the words boy and girl as it excludes non-binary people.
Oh, please make it stop, sis. Make it stop.
It keeps on going at him. She also tweeted out, my 30-year-old brother was listening to NPR on reactions to the new Ghostbusters movie and said, quote, white men, we really are pretty much the problem these days.
Oh my God. She's got her family members broadcasting their white guilt.
Their white guilt, their racism. Yeah. She also said, quote, this is another tweet she put out. She said, airline business class demographics are such a pet peeve of mine. In the lounge and on the plane, it's usually greater than 80% male, usually white.
Wow.
Talk
Okay.
about like first world problems. Like, oh, the business class demographics in the airline lounge are just too white for me and too male for me. Okay, excuse me, lady.
Wow.
She in 2018 she called Bill Maher a racist bigot.
Bill Maher?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Must have been when he did that N-word thing and got called out.
Oh, maybe that was in. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
She tweeted a post that was advocating for an essay that was advocating for reparations in America. She tweeted out, quote, white silence is complicity. If you are white, today is the day to start a conversation in your community.
Yeah, I'm going to start that conversation today. It's going to be
Mm-hmm.
about how we should not give in to white guilt. That's the conversation. That's the conversation I'm going to start. Sitch, what do you think?
I listen every day. I walk around where I live. I have that. Have you seen Die Hard 3?
Oh yeah, that's a great movie.
Yeah, you know how the bad guy made John McClane like do things, otherwise he's gonna start blowing up like schools and banks and stuff.
Oh yeah.
And he makes him wear a big billboard in a black neighborhood that says MLK is the N word. Only it says the N word,
Oh
right?
my
You
God, I
remember that?
remember that. You
Yeah.
can't do that anymore. That's
Right. So
not
like, yeah, so I took inspiration from that movie and I walk around my community with a big billboard that says white people are all the worst. Okay. And then when they come up to me, when white people come up to me angrily, I say, like, listen, I'm just trying to wake you up so we can have a conversation about white silence in America.
right. How about we do a billboard that says white guilt sucks?
That's very racist. Okay. I can't believe you even suggest that. So, do you remember the story that took place some years ago in New York City Park where a woman had a dog and there was a man who happened to be black who was a bird watcher who was annoyed that her dog was not leashed and wanted her to leash her dog and get her dog out of the park because it ruins his bird watching, and she didn't comply with what he was asking for. So he then took out dog treats and suggested that he was going to possibly kidnap or harm her dog by calling her dog to him. Do you remember this?
I do remember this story. It was a
And
big story. Yeah.
and she grabs her dog, in a frantic panic, and is like calls the police and says that this black man is threatening me and my dog, and freaks out. And she got super ultra canceled and her dog taken away because all the hyper ultra dishonest news reporting about this left out the fact that this guy was implying very very strongly that he was going to take her dog or do something nefarious to her dog,
Yeah,
even
she
though
was
he
afraid for her
wasn't
dog's.
actually. But the way he worded it like definitely would imply that to the average person.
She was afraid for her dog's safety. Exactly.
Yes.
But all that was left out of the news reporting and they
Right.
painted her as a racist Karen. Yeah.
Yes. So this is what the CEO of NPR, okay, Catherine Marr, said in response to that story.
Oh, let's
Okay.
hear it.
She said, I know that hysteric white woman voice. I was taught to do it. I've done it. It's a disturbing recognition. While I don't recall ever using it to deliberately expose another person to immediate physical harm of my own cognition, it's not impossible. This is whiteness. Yes, I was taught by my mother, but by society that rewards the artificial hysteria of white women with its attention. For me, more like not getting bumped from a flight. In this case, it was performing fear to activate structural racism with potential lethal consequences.
Wow. That was crazy.
That was her response to that story. Okay. And then one other tweet I want to highlight that she talked about was, if you recall, during BLM again, Tom Cotton, okay, sitting senator, he wrote an op-ed talking about how we need to have the military basically involved in stopping violent riots and looting and things of that nature. And the New York Times published this, and some people went so insane, and they literally fired, okay, the editor in charge of the New York Times op-eds because he allowed a sitting senator, to write an op-ed in the New York Times
Right.
about, this situation.
I remember this too.
Yeah, which, by the way, like, you know, from like when you read the article, he's not even nothing he's saying is even that crazy. And it even says specifically that the rioting and the violence has nothing to do with George Floyd, and that these people are simply using that as an excuse to basically loot. Right. So he's
But
not even
Sitch,
associating it with like the political cause of, police reform or anything of that nature.
but Sitch, is he a Republican?
He is a Republican. That's true. I
Oh,
forgot. Yeah.
so well, you see what the problem is here.
So this is what Catherine Marr said in response to that op-ed, okay? Which I feel is very important because she's the president of NPR. She's the president of a massive news organization,
Yeah, the
okay?
president and CEO, brand
Right,
new. Yeah,
right. So here's what she said in response to arguing that the New York Times should not have published the op-ed of a sitting senator during this moment. She said, his piece, Khan's piece, is full of racist dog whistles. It's also based on a false premise that the country is in a state of disorder, when it's more correctly in a state of protest. Parentheses, disorder itself being racially coded for any time white supremacy is challenged. I think many people, including myself, would assert Cotton's interpretation of data and conflation of concepts was willfully manipulative. Example, misinformation. It shames the New York Times to publish an op-ed that would never have passed journalistic editorial review.
right.
So there you go. So this is the president of NPR with an insane take on the Tom Cotton op-ed. Okay. So we can guess, obviously, from her tweets that obviously she did not really respond positively to Yuri's criticism about the NPR becoming way too uh, leftist. Okay. So these are some excerpts from her response that I think really show where her headspace is. It really show where the future of NPR lies until they get new president or it's defunded and gutted, hopefully. She says, I joined this organization because public media is essential for an informed public. At its best, our work can help shape and illuminate the very sense of what it means to have a shared public identity as fellow Americans in this sprawling and enduring complex nation. Now, on its own, I would agree with the concept that we as a fellow Americans do need to have a shared American public identity. But why would I trust this woman who is so ridiculous that she thinks using the word disorder is a racial code for white supremacy being challenged? I wouldn't trust this woman with anything, let alone with something as complicated as trying to maintain or create a cohesive shared American public identity in a major publication like NPR.
Yeah, that's going to be the giant problem. Her idea of a shared identity is progressive. Like
Yes.
that's basically it.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. My way or the
She
highway.
She continues saying NPR's service to this aspirational mission was called into question this week in two distinct ways. The first was a critique of the quality of our editorial process and the integrity of our journalists. The second was a criticism of our people on the basis of who we are. Now, that seems to me to be incredibly dishonest because when she says it was a criticism of the people on the basis of who we are, she's implying that Yuri was criticizing people because of their race, right?
Yep.
Which
Exactly what she's doing.
he 1000% did not do. He was entirely focused on the fact that NPR was way too politically biased, way too ideologically one sided. He did not criticize anyone on the basis of their skin color. And it's insanely dishonest for her to say or imply this whatsoever.
Yeah.
She continues saying, asking a question about whether we're living up to our mission should always be fair game. After all, journalism is nothing if not hard questions. Questions whether our people are serving our mission with integrity based on little more than the recognition of their identity is profoundly disrespectful, hurtful, and demeaning. Okay. Again, like this is so bad. I almost feel like he should be able to sue for defamation or he should be able to sue for some kind of workplace discrimination. She just said questioning whether people are serving our mission based on the recognition of their identity is profoundly disrespectful, hurtful, and demeaning. He did not do that. He 100% did not do that. What he talked about was that there's all these identity groups for all these various identities at NPR that have somehow weaseled their way into the union contracts and weaseled their way into actually controlling the language that journalists have to use when they talk about stories, and they're all highly ideologically motivated.
Right.
She continues saying it's deeply simplistic to assert that the diversity of America can be reduced. This is now, okay, listen to how ridiculous what she's about to say is. It's deeply simplistic to assert that the diversity of America can be reduced to any particular set of beliefs and faulty reasoning to infer that identity is determinative of one's thoughts or political leanings.
Even though in the previous paragraph, she basically said as much.
She literally said as much. Is that insane?
It is.
Like, how did you miss that? It's
It
so
is
stupid.
totally. Yeah, this in this belief system, your racial identity dictates your belief system.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's
That's so ironic.
It's so ironic because that's Yuri's entire point. Yuri's entire point is we're not really living up to any level of diversity because all we have is racial diversity, which should be unimportant in terms of a journalistic outlook if all the ideological diversity, if there's no ideological diversity, if it's all the same ideology.
Yeah.
And then she just repeats that and like as is a criticism against him.
Bonkers.
Wow. She continues saying each of our colleagues are here because they are an excellent, accomplished professional with an intense commitment to our work. We are stronger because of the work we do together, and we owe each other our utmost respect. We fulfill our mission best when we look and sound like the country we serve.
Which they don't. That's the problem. You do not look and sound like the country you serve. You may look like the country you serve. You certainly don't sound like it.
Yes. Which was, again, Yuri's entire point. And he never criticized at all. And he actually applauded in his piece. He never criticized that the journalist staff was, had more diversity. Yeah. He never
Ethnic
criticized
diversity.
that.
Yeah.
Whenever he just said that there's no ideological diversity or very little ideological diversity. And as you said, Adam, that's what's important. I mean, I think that's even more important when you're talking about a publication that's supposed to be informing the people. There needs to be ideological diversity.
Yeah, when you're talking about disseminating ideas to a wide swath of America who has a bunch of different ideas, sometimes conflicting, you need to hash that out in the pages of your rag, for heaven's sakes.
Yes, yes. Now, here, the next paragraph, this is why I read her tweets first, because she says things that if you read in a vacuum, you'd say, that sounds good. But then when you see her past tweets, you understand the dishonest, like leftist gobbledygook language she's using to hide here.
Oh, it's on perfect display with me. Yeah. I read this. I didn't read any of her previous tweets. I read this article and I was like,
right.
This is horrible. Yeah.
She said, given the very real challenges of covering the myriad perspectives, motivations, and interests of a nation of more than 330 million very different people, we succeed through our diversity. This is a bedrock institutional commitment, hard won and hard protected. So again, that sounds like it should be good, right? Like, oh, we succeed through our diversity to, talk about, represent all the 330 million people in America. But that's a lie. Because when she says diversity, she just means the skin color diversity, the ethnic diversity. She doesn't mean anything about the intellectual, philosophical, ideological diversity of the country, which is more important when you're writing these sorts of, when you're, running a publication, right?
And arguably the strongest thing about America.
Yes.
You go look for intellectual diversity in places like Iran.
Right. Well, and also it is racist that her and other people assume that if you have racial diversity, they're going to have intellectual diversity. Because you're saying like, oh, well, because like different people of different races all have different, they're going to have an automatically different ideological thought process just because they have a different skin color. That's the exact opposite of the liberal notion, that we supposed to be living under in America.
Yeah. She doesn't get any of that. Look, she's an ideologue. This is so sad because this is the person that runs NPR, a
Yeah,
giant news organization.
right, right. Yeah, and we talked about how the previous president was all saying that, like, after George Floyd was saying that we need to have this North Star of everything has to be about, basically woke diversity and fighting, racism in America. And this woman is just more of the same, right?
Yeah.
She continues saying, "It is true that our audience has unquestionably changed over the course of the past 2 decades," which is referencing, yeah, he was talking about how basically their audience lost most of their conservatives and centrists and all became, leftists. "There is much to be proud of here. Through difficult work, focus work, we have earned new trust from younger, more diverse audiences, particularly in our digital experiences. These audiences constitute new generations of listeners, are more representative of America, and are changing patterns of listening, viewing, and reading."
This should just say, we have earned new trust from younger, more gullible audiences, particularly in our digital experiences. And
Yes.
then this paragraph would be truth.
It's this is so wildly dishonest because, like, yeah, you've gained a bunch of young
Yeah,
whites,
easily
mostly,
manipulated.
left,
Yeah.
super lefty college students. And she's like, "Oh, it's so good. It's more diverse now. Yeah. We don't care about any ideological diversity. We just need to have more colors. Okay. That's all that matters. More colors of the rainbow represented." And
Man.
then the last thing that I want to talk about that she said was, which I think is kind of hilarious. She says, "Serving and engaging audiences we should be serving and engaging audiences that are as diverse as our nation, urban and rural, liberal and conservative, rich and poor, often together in one community." Now, of course, nothing in her statement shows that there'd be literally any change whatsoever, that there will be anything going on to try to get more conservative voices or even more center voices, let alone at NPR, and that this is a statement that says we're going to just continue forward. If you don't like it, get bent.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I wasn't real happy about Trump talking about defunding NPR. I mean, I think it takes a lot of energy to build up these institutions and to build up their reputations. So I think transforming the institution from being horrible like NPR is now is a better path.
Mhm.
But I'm not sure that's even possible at this point. Maybe it is time just to scrap the whole thing.
Yeah, actually, I don't remember. There was a thing about, even though obviously NPR gets public funding, they do get a lot of private funding as well. I don't know what the exact breakdown is. And I'm with you. I would prefer for it to, and I think it is salvageable if they could get a president who was actually
Understood? Yeah.
good. Yeah, a president who wanted to bring back, center values, understood liberalism, not Democrat liberalism, but like individual rights liberalism that America is founded on, understood these ideas and wanted to recenter it. A president who actually cared about trying to
Truth.
be
Yeah.
truth, trying to have an organization that represents truth and being impartial. I think NPR could 100% be saved if you could get that president. The $1 million question is, would they, will they get that president? It seems very, very unlikely to me that that will happen anytime soon.
And can that president be effective? Because look at this. I mean, you're going to have mutiny on your hands. Every single person in this organization is one of these ideologues.
Yeah.
Whatever that president does that seems reasonable from a moderate centrist perspective
Mm-hmm.
is going to look like white supremacy to these people. They're going to be bringing it up at HR at every turn. They're going to be drowning in legal fees. They hired all these people, Sitch.
Well, I mean, at least that would be a good way for them to go out, is to have someone very sensible doing very public, sensible things and just exposing to America to watch, the children that work here lose their minds, try to sue them. And everyone looks at what's happening saying these are all reasonable changes, reasonable articles being produced. And you people are just totally insane.
Yeah. Will
So
be fun to cover, that's for sure.
it will be. But unfortunately, it looks like that's not going to happen. And NPR will just further and further decline into being basically slop. So
Right. to be a laughing stock.
Yeah.
National Propaganda Radio.
There you go. I love it.
Yeah. Very sad. So any final thoughts before we sign off?
That's it.
Hi, you just listened to a Sitch and Adam recorded video. That's right, we're still doing recorded videos. And we're even doing shorter daily live streams now, beginning at 2 p.m. Eastern, where we cover the top news stories of the day. Check it out. And you can super chat us, or you can join the channel. Subscribe to this channel right here to watch the live show or watch more of our awesome deep dive videos.